It's show and tell day at school, and all of the kids are requested to bring in an item that illustrates their religious beliefs. One child stands up and says, "This is the Star of David. I am a Jew." Another child stands up and says, "This is a crucifix. I'm a Catholic." Another child stands up and says, "This is a coffee pot. I am a Unitarian Universalist." Our Holy Communion team, and by that I mean our coffee team, is short on volunteers. There have been a few changes, right? We have coffee back. But yes. Can I get an amen? Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Amen. However, COVID has sort of decimated our ranks of volunteers, and it takes about 20 people each month to put out coffee service. Right now, we have about 10. So we need to get another 10 volunteers for coffee. If you're new, this is a great way to get involved. You come a little early, you meet people, they're very funny. Salt of the church, truly. Is Gene here? No, you are. So, tell me your name again. Pauline. So, come talk to Pauline. There we go. It'll really help us out.
And there's a sign-up sheet.
There's a sign-up sheet. Very important. Okay, a few more announcements. We are having a booth this year for Pride. First time we've done that. It also means that we have to staff it. So we've got about 5 volunteers so far. We still need about another 5 or 8. If you want to staff the Pride booth, please reach out to me. It's minister@slcuu. That's on June 4th and June 5th. There are sign-up dates. Some of you have already heard, masks are now optional. However, people have been asking, why have we taken so long? Because our value has always been to be with those who are most at jeopardy. So we've taken a little longer, and we actually are still encouraging masks. It's optional, you can do what you want, but our concern is still for the most vulnerable among us, so we still strongly recommend them. Today at 2:30, out at the Great Salt Lake, the park, it's called Great Salt Lake Park, which is on the southern side of the lake, we are holding a day of public witness. There'll be a service. We're doing it together with South Valley UU and Holiday United Church of Christ. And we're going to have this sort of public witness and ritual? It's going to be a Wiccan party out there. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. Ritual. For what's happening with the climate, for what's happening to our lake. Like, it's really heartbreaking. And we're going out there to grieve and to mourn, but also to experience hope. Please come. We have 2 committees that need volunteers. The nominating committee, which helps put people on the board and guide this congregation, and the search committee for the next senior minister. This time next year, you will know who your next senior minister is. If you want to be part of that process, it's an incredibly rewarding process, and you can just reach out to the office if you want to be a part of that. Nominations are now being accepted. And finally, our social justice team is looking for new members. We're up. The social justice committee is fading away. We're creating a new team, and they're looking for about 5 to 7 people who want to be on that to help us think about, imagine, encourage social justice work within this congregation. So if that's an interest to you, please reach out to either Phil Bossert or Lisa Height at socialjustice@slcuu. All right. Let's begin our worship. Maybe just letting those announcements sink in, but also go away. Just taking a breath. Let us be guided by the words of Lori Stewart people. in the spirit of community and a sense of purpose in our ministry, our shared ministry. Let us commence the discovery of our strengths, our concerns, our grief, and our joy. Let this journey be one of love, authenticity, and reverence. Let us shape our lives, our work, and our days as an expression of that joy, that love, and our commitment to service and to each other.
This morning, we are holding our child dedication ceremony. It's one of my favorite rituals of our liturgical year. The last child dedication we held was in 2019, this being one of the few rituals that we just couldn't do over Zoom. For those unfamiliar, this is the service we welcome families with new children to our congregation and our circle of love. Families don't seek out faith communities to be alone. They search for faith communities to be just that, communities. They want a community not just of parents, but a multi-age community. They want the support of a community to love and nurture their children. And if we, as a community, want to grow, we too need to be seeking out families. We need to welcome and encourage families to stay. We need to move with kindness and understanding first. This month's theme of surrender offers an interesting question in regard to our welcome for community. What are we willing to let go of in order to grow as a church? Is it possible that we can adapt our traditions in worship? Is this absolute silence in the sanctuary necessary? Is giving a little more space in a pew or are we able to do that? Is this changing from a sideways glare at a baby to an encouraging smile to a parent? Truly being in community is sometimes messy, often noisy, but offers so much in return. With that, we'd like to welcome our families and children up here to join us in this ritual today. And family, beloved community, we have been brought together by these children for this joyous occasion to recognize and welcome them into this congregation and our circle of love. A day to give thanks for the beauty of this earth. A day to recognize that the sacred calling of community is to guide and nurture their children together. Welcome to this circle of love, my friends. We recognize all that are gathered here now and those who are away from us in distance and time. We honor the ancestors who have left this world, but not our hearts, and we welcome them here in our minds. I want to begin with this poem by the poet Hafiz. What is the root of these words? One thing, love. But a love so deep and sweet, it needed to express itself with the scents, sounds, colors that never before existed. My friends, good morning. Who did you bring with you today?
I brought Theodore and Nina.
Welcome, Theodore and Nina. Who did you bring today?
This is Clara and Arlo.
Good morning, Clara and Arlo.
We brought Freddie and Ellie.
Good morning, Freddie and Ellie. Who did you bring today?
We brought Shiona and Momoka.
Good morning, Shiona and Momoka. Who did you bring today?
This is James.
Hi, James. Thank you all so much for being with us today. Now, this is Ian's part. We talked about this. I swear to God, we planned this. There was a meeting.
I'm the monkey. Point me in the direction. Okay. We welcome you all to our community. We give thanks for your life within our community and for the hope that you bring. You are unique. There is nothing else like you in the entire world. Your parents and your family welcome you in all of your uniqueness, sometimes having a glass of wine.
when they do that. We give you this rose as a symbol of love. We also recognize that, like a rose, you will need nurture and care to grow. And we are ready to be a place for you to find what you need to thrive and to bloom. With its beauty, roses also have thorns, which remind us that life is beautiful but can be filled with hardships. When those hardships present themselves, our community will be there to support and love your family.
Do you, parents, agree to love and support and dedicate yourselves to do all that you can to share the beauty and goodness of life with your children? If you agree, please say we do. We do.
Do you, the congregation of the First Church of Salt Lake City, right, agree to delight in these children's accomplishments, share in their sorrows, and encourage them in every way as they grow into adulthood? Will you help raise these children to love justice and live with compassion? Will you extend kindness and courage? If you agree, please say, we do. We do.
Let us bless these children with the wonders of the earth. Let us, as a community, support these families as they continue to grow. In you, we find hope for a better world. In you, we share new life. We rejoice with your parents, families, and friends, and take upon ourselves the privilege and responsibility of helping to nurture you in character and spirit. We wish you all the joy and happiness in your life, so full of promise. It is a beautiful world, and you have made it more beautiful still. Thank you, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City.
My younger sister was born with profound intellectual and developmental disabilities and took hours to nurse. My mother had her hands full. As a toddler, I learned that my normal needs were not as pressing as hers, and that I had to fend for myself. At least that's the story I tell myself about why it has always been so hard for me to ask for anything from anybody. Don't get me wrong, I can ask you for money for this church. I could negotiate a good deal for my employer. But to ask for myself, for my own benefit, is just too hard. From an early age, I learned to be independent. I remember my father, a doctor, had no patience for hypochondria or malingering, as he called it. We kids had to be really sick to stay home from school. There was no sympathy for the common cold. My brother and I, comparing notes recently, discovered that we had each sent our kids to school dismissing their stomach aches, only to get calls a couple of hours later asking us to pick up our children who had thrown up in class. This denial of vulnerability and need runs deep in my family. So in 2015, when the cardiologist told Jim he should waste no time in scheduling his heart surgery, I naturally turned to myself to deal with my feelings. I tried to cope by managing the situation. I researched Jim's condition, the risks and benefits of different surgical approaches, and identified the best surgeons on our health plans. I made a list of surgeons to interview and questions to ask. But as the surgery date approached, I found myself gripped by fear. I worried about all that could go wrong, remembering my mother, who had gone into the hospital for a seemingly straightforward heart procedure and didn't make it out alive. Even knowing this situation was completely different, the potential for such an unexpected worst case was top of mind. I couldn't share these fears with Jim. He had enough of his own worries. And in an echo of my childhood, I certainly didn't want to burden him with my concerns. And I knew my fears were irrational, so I just soldiered on, kept busy, distracted, and tried not to let anyone see how fast I was running on the hamster wheel in my brain. I've mentioned before that I participate in a 12-step program where I learned to keep an eye out for fear, and when I notice it, to talk to someone about it, say a prayer, and then go help someone else. So I started making phone calls. I called one after another of my 12-step fellows and described the fear, hoping that by sharing it, it would loosen its grip. This strategy has often worked for me in the past. If I'm feeling uncomfortable or distressed about something, rather than running away from the emotion, I try to investigate, name, and accept it. Something about this process helps it to pass like a puffy cloud in the sky. Conversely, when I deny or resist what I'm feeling, it tends to stick around, even intensify like a stalled hurricane. But this time, no matter how much I talked to people, no matter how deeply I probed, the fear wouldn't leave me. I tried to talk myself out of it using logic and information that I gathered during my weeks of research. Nothing helped until at last I surrendered. Now, when I think of the word surrender, I usually imagine a humiliating battlefield defeat where the unequivocal loser waves a white flag to stem further destruction, or a sports team shut out by a vastly superior rival that forfeits before the end of the game because there's no point in continuing, or a political campaign where the loser concedes the election. These are all painful losses. But what if surrender isn't like a battlefield humiliation? What if it's like slipping into a hot bath, where your muscles give up their tension, go limp, and accept the embrace and buoyancy of the hot water? Or the catharsis of letting loose that flood of tears you've been holding back? Or the total release and warm glow of orgasm? What if it's about releasing the tension and abandoning the struggle more than about the loss itself? Surrender happened for me when I quit fighting. And the thing is, I couldn't just decide to surrender on my own will. It happened to me. All the time I was fighting to be rid of fear, it wouldn't let me go. And then, in a moment, these thoughts came seemingly from nowhere. What if fear was a reasonable response to the situation? What if it simply reflected my grief at my mother's loss, bundled with my vulnerability in sending my husband under the knife? What if it was an opportunity to develop compassion for others who might find themselves in similar circumstances? When viewed in this light, the fight just went out of me. I was surrendered, and in a strange way, I made friends with the fear. With the fight over, I still felt fear, but its intensity diminished. Once freed from the struggle, I was able to ask for support. I invited friends over the night before the surgery to a Last Supper, asking everyone to bring a dish and a surgery joke to share. My invitation wasn't just social. It was a request for love and support in a time of vulnerability, and it was possible only in surrender. I like how Rumi's poem, The Guest House, puts it. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. When I stopped resisting, opened the door, and welcomed the visiting fear, it revealed itself as a guide from beyond that helped me ask for and gratefully accept the support I didn't even know I needed.
And now is my opportunity to ask you for money. Those voices are new. They're new for me, right? And I can feel it in me. Like, oh, that's not the way things are or the way things are supposed to be. And so if you're feeling challenged, I am also, like, we're in it together, right? We're trying to really think about what it means to be in community. And you'll hear more about this in the sermon, but there is a growth that happens here. That's the purpose of church. It's not about performance. It's about the emotions that we feel, the spiritual connection we have, the understanding of who we are in the universe and in relationship to one another. There is no other point for church, in my opinion. I'm not a believer in the great shiny rock bands or anything that's about being a performer, right? I am here to be a companion and in the journey with you as we try to figure out how to be the best people we can be. That's a long way of saying we're going to accept an offertory. And the offertory really is about building and supporting a place that helps us not to put on great music. We have great music. Not to put on great speakers. We have amazing speakers. But to become human, truly live into what it means. Where all of our buttons sometimes get pushed, and we sometimes find ways to be better. Be better. The offertory will now be accepted. Thank you. Just before I moved to Salt Lake City, I was living in the Cambridge Zen Center, which is a Korean Buddhist temple tucked away in the middle of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was my second time living at the temple. I've lived and practiced there for a total of about 6 years, a little over 6 years, which is why, this is so spiritual. You're welcome. And it's, many people have ideas about what it is like to live in a temple. And they would often get disappointed when I would tell them stories about what it's actually like and how we would fight and what jerks I thought some of the monastics could be. And even for those who don't really have any real relationship to Buddhism, my anecdotes of temple life seem to deflate them. The image of the serene setting with its community of the mindful, real or not, is important for people to believe in. The temple, Buddhist or otherwise, is held up as a refuge, a sacred space we can turn to in times of need. And when we are thirsty, it holds the water that will restore us. When we are frightened or alone, it provides the shelter, warmth, and encouragement we need to go on. The temple offers gifts you cannot measure by any yardstick of the material world. And whether we visit a temple or a church on a regular basis or not, we know that these places are always there to help us grow and become better people. This is why so often people leave large bequests in their will, sometimes, very substantial amounts. These people may not even have been able to attend for years, but they remain grateful that the temple existed when they needed it. Unitarian Universalist congregations typically do not inspire the same fantasies that Buddhist temples conjure up. We have no ancient stone buildings atop mountains, nestled amongst the clouds. We have no monastic tradition. Our ministers can be a bit too human sometimes. Too human, at least, to meet the lofty ideals that we sometimes want to see in our houses of worship and leaders. and the community of worshipers. Sometimes you guys are a little too human also. Right? Sometimes the arguments we have or the stupid things the minister says or does can deflate us. The lived reality of our worship experience does not meet the ideal of what we think it should be. But is it the vision of what we think it should be, or is it the lived reality of the church as it actually is that helps us fashion our lives in more compassionate and responsible ways? The founder of the Cambridge Zen Center, Zen Master Seung San, often told a story about the temple being similar to cooking potatoes in a pot. He commented that in the West, we wash potatoes one at a time, and then we, put them in the pot to cook. But in Korea, he would say, people put all of the potatoes in the pot together, and as they boil, as they cook, they bump into one another, and the friction generates this opportunity to knock the dirt off. By the time the potatoes are done cooking, they are clean. Being in a temple is like this, he would say. The image of the serene and mindful is not real. It's a chimera. The fantasy is not that helpful because we project an ideal that we cannot attain. Bumping into one another, however, is pretty real, right? Even though we don't often think of it as being that helpful. But it can be. In the Buddhist tradition, they understand all sentient beings as having karma, or attachments, derived from past events, both beneficial and harmful. The potatoes in Seung San's story are people wrestling with this karma. People bump because they haven't worked through the attachments that are causing them to collide in that moment. People bump in part because of the actions of another person, and in part because of what we bring to the situation. But Seung San doesn't disparage this bumping together. In fact, it's an essential part of the path of awakening. Bumping together is the way to get clean. It's the way to see ourselves, to see what we are bringing to any situation, if we choose to see it. It is the way to see our karma. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have a well-developed theory of karma, a theology of a life being shaped by lifetimes of behaviors and events. And given our convert culture, meaning most people have converted from something else, right? We are often very future-focused rather than past-focused. But the metaphor of the potatoes cleaning themselves in a pot is still very useful. It seems unlikely. It could be true, but it seems unlikely that a God will come down and take away our suffering, regardless of how attractive that might be. More likely is that we are responsible for cultivating the awakened experience, moment by moment, through the discipline of paying attention to one another. That is, we have a theology of responsibility for how we treat one another. It is this encounter with you that helps me want to become a better person. It is through our shared experience that I am able to see possibility. There used to be a theory of interim ministry that claimed by adding stress to a system, by increasing the heat of the boiling pot and creating more bouncing, the congregation would discover the areas that needed work. That always struck me as a little bit ludicrous, in no small part because y'all bounce against one another enough as it is. Right? And simply adding something new, like an interim minister or COVID, already adds more potatoes to the pot, which creates more collisions, more ideas about what is right and what is wrong, all bouncing together. And we have already bounced some, and as we spend more time together and the honeymoon wears off, we'll bounce together some more. You know? Bumping is simply going to happen by having a different person in the system. There will be more bumping when the next minister comes as well. That's just going to happen. There is no perfect minister that is going to come and be perfect for all of you. But this bumping, taking on the bumping, can become part of our spiritual practice. I am not free of my karma. I bring my own stuff to this starchy soup. Some of which is great. Some of which, well, I have to work on quite a bit, right? I still need to be washed off. But I am not free of my karma because no one is ever free of their karma. Nobody is ever released from the karma. The countless numbers of blessings and sufferings that brought each of us, you and me, to this very moment. Now, sometimes you hear some derivative Buddhist stuff say that you can be released from your karma. That's just simply not true. The point of the pot is not to be free from our karma. That's as much an illusion and fantasy as the serene temple in the cloud-covered mountain. The point of the pot is to see our karma, to see the attachments that we have to our thoughts, which we then turn into something that we call the truth. And then we build these foundations on that truth into something that we call right and something that we call wrong. Now, my particular focus in interim ministry has always been to draw attention to the process, to look at what is causing the bumping, to suggest that we use the bumping not to point fingers, right, and say, that Alexis, gosh, yeah. Right? But to use that moment to hold up a mirror and say, what am I bringing to this moment of conflict? What thought of mine has been converted to the truth, which can then be supported or violated by my friends or my enemies? How can the bumping become part of our spiritual practice? How can we begin to see ourselves not just talking with congregants, but as engaging in holy conversations? Engaging in a spiritual practice of understanding ourselves and the world around us. Now, I get that even that can sound like a fantasy, right? You want each of my encounters with someone here to be a spiritual practice? I mean, it can be. You know, technically the answer is yes. But that's not my lived experience either. Like, I'm not trying to say you have to live up to that. Most of the time, I feel swallowed up by administrative tasks that do not feel holy at all. Right? Staff meetings, board meetings, reports, people complaining about that so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. Right? It feels very prosaic. Me complaining about so-and-so did this. And I live with these fantasies of heading up to the mountains where the real spirituality is. You know, watch the birds and hear the leaves crunch beneath my feet, touch the earth with my hands and remember where I came from. But that's usually because I've lost the thread. I've misplaced the opportunity to see what is happening right in front of me in the sacred encounter staring back at me. Each of you are the sacred encounter, not that thing in the mountain. If I did not have a community to help remind me that the spiritual life is important, to encourage me, to hold me, my walks in the mountains, which, I do love, I value those, they would not be the same. Our karma is to be in community so that we might work on ourselves, surrendering our attachments to what we believe is the truth and the fortresses that we have built out of our beliefs in right and wrong. If we embrace the pot of potatoes as an opportunity to see through our karma, to understand how it controls us, then it becomes clear that we need the community because nothing else has the same power to clean us. And the other members of the community need us to encourage them on their sacred journey of understanding themselves and seeing through what they believe is the truth. Now, we don't say, Alexis, you are really attached to what you think is the truth, right? That's not how we encourage them, right? Mostly it's by modeling. Sometimes it's important, though. Now, it can sound hokey to say that, holy conversations, spiritual conversations, these are what we need to be happening. These are what we need to do. We need to engage in these all the time. When it's forced like that, it feels inauthentic. But so often we talk about the beloved community. I'll tell you, man, Unitarian Universalists love to talk about the beloved community more than anything else I know, right? And they talk about it as if it's some space out there where we no longer have any differences of opinion, right? Waxing poetically about the beauty and the serenity of religious communities, the beloved community. That is kind of hokey. That's not what the beloved community means. And as I was writing the sermon, it dawned on me that there is something particular to Unitarian Universalism that has to do with our karma because of what brought us here into this room. And my thoughts kept returning to a piece by Howard Thurman called The Inward Sea. And those of you who are in the small groups, you used it earlier this year, but for those of you who are unfamiliar with the piece, this is how it goes. There is in every person an inward sea. And in that sea, there is an island. And on that island, there is an altar. And standing guard before that altar is the angel with the flaming sword. And nothing can get by that angel to be placed upon the altar unless it has the mark of your inner authority. Nothing passes the angel with the flaming sword to be placed upon your altar unless it be a part of that fluid area of your consent. This is your crucial link to the eternal. Unitarian Universalists are sometimes wary when it comes to religion, when it comes to holy and spiritual conversations. And I believe this is because we strive to be earnest. And many of us have been hurt by the religious communities that raised us. Religious communities have hurt us. So authenticity has become an ideal for us. More than anything, many of us want to have these holy and spiritual conversations, but so much of the so-called religion that surrounds us reeks of inauthenticity, and it offends our sensibility so greatly that we turn away from those conversations altogether, as a rule or as a reaction, saying something like, I am not going to put myself out there one more time just so I can be let down again. The angel with the flaming sword stands guard over our inner altars with a fierce determination. And too often our inner authority has been compromised. Too often our ideals of what should be have been dashed. We are not just optimists when it comes to our beliefs in the possibility of human progress and companionship, right? With our beliefs that the world can be a better place. We are also spiritual optimists reaching out to the eternal. Nothing but the most authentic will do. Honestly, I love it. I do. Because I'll tell you why. Because I can get so wrapped up in my ego. This box right here is an ego-making machine. It is. Look at all these people coming to listen to the words I wrote. Gosh, darn it, they're really important. It is, God, there's nothing worse than a pulpit for a person. Truly. So, like, listening to a little truck make some noise, that is, golly, bringing you to be a human being, I love it. Because actually there isn't anything I want more than to be a human being. I don't want to be someone up in a pulpit, right? I mean, I do. But also, I don't want to be that guy. Right? I don't want to be that guy. Because that's me being special. That's me being special. I don't want to be special. I want to be with you. That's all I really want. And the lure of the special, the siren call, right? People coming up afterwards, wow, that sermon was great. It's lovely, right? But it's an ego-making machine, and that's not what I want. I want to be in love with you. And I can't do that when I'm special. Who knows where it was? We'll pick up from here. Maybe it's good. Who knows? The authentic has no form. It has no form. There's no path to it. There's no book to it, right? It can only be recognized by the mark of our inner authority. But sometimes even our own angel standing guard over our inner altar seems menacing. Menacing to me, right? With the flaming sword. Sometimes we look out at our community and we look at all of the bumping that we're doing with others, and we wonder if anything is authentic. Authentic enough, anyway, to pass by the angel, to be placed on our altar. And that can feel very discouraging. But perhaps it is the very bumping itself, right? The truck with the noise, right? The bumping itself that can be understood as the sacred. That noise is the sacred. And that is what I'm not placing the noise on the altar. I am placing my thought of what is right on the altar. It's an offering that we make as we search for who we really are. Our purpose as Unitarian Universalists extends beyond bringing more justice to the world, beyond building a larger membership or a good pledge drive, beyond sharing the blessings of our faith. Right? The world is collapsing. The world is collapsing beneath the weight of people's attachments to the truth, beneath the weight of the fortresses that we have built up, that we call right and that we call wrong. The world is collapsing beneath the weight of our collective karma. And instead of looking upon this place as a sanctuary from the inauthentic that surrounds us like an ocean, like a sea, a sanctuary where we stand on the ramparts, wagging our fingers out at the wasteland. Perhaps this place can help us look inward, using our bumping like a mirror. None of us can resolve another person's karma. We can only be responsible for our own. I cannot resolve your karma, just as you can't resolve mine. And truly, I have so much crap to work through, you wouldn't want that anyway. Right? But we can agree to companion one another. And I accept you as my companion. And I want to be accepted as your companion on the sacred inward journey as we search for what holds the mark of our inner authority. Our karma is not to run away to the mountains to live in solitude. Our karma is to be with one another. The bumping we experience occurs as a way for us to better learn how to be responsible for our own karma, which in turn influences the collective karma of the world. The purpose of Unitarian Universalism is realizing that it starts with us, that it starts with me. You are not born a sinner. You are born with worth and dignity. But you have karma, a life shaped by lifetimes of behaviors and events that brought you to this moment, to this sanctuary, to sit on this cushion. Right? All of our lives are interrelated. So our karma impacts the world around us just as we are impacted by the karma that surrounds us. It is time to lay down the fantasies we hold and the standards we use to judge and measure the religious experience and the significance of the holy conversation. They have no meaning for us and only cause us to judge ourselves inappropriately. When we try to engage in spiritual conversations from a fantasy about some pure authenticity, that is hokey, and it will not pass the angel of our inner authority. And we are demanding spiritual people, so demanding sometimes that it seems easier to say that we are not spiritual at all. We struggle to find ourselves among the pantheon of different religions because authenticity has replaced God as our absolute. Being lied to, being manipulated. Yeah, dance down the aisle. Come on. I love dancing down the aisle. You're going to see me dance down the aisle in a minute. It was like spontaneous in the first sermon, so it won't be that spontaneous. You're going to see it. But, little secret. Dance down the aisle, truly. What is precious to us? What is precious to us is our authentic self. And when we have been lied to, that has become an offense. It becomes an attack on our inner altar. So we guard it fiercely sometimes. We hide it away so that others cannot see it. But to live into our purpose means bringing that altar out into the open. It means becoming willing to admit that we desire a spiritual life and the holy conversation. It means surrendering the attachments to the truth and the fortresses of right and wrong that keep us separated from one another. Being vulnerable in this way is frightening. No one wants to be discounted or dismissed, least of all by members of our own faith community. Perhaps most of all by members of our own faith community. Am I really going to show you my most sensitive side? That place where the mark of my inauthority is, when there's so much bumping that goes on around here? Yes, I am. I am going to do that. You are the people who understand each other. You are the people who know how precious your inner altars truly are and what a violation it can be when inauthenticity reigns. You are also the people who will clean one another. As frightening as that may sound. The temple is here to help us. And there are people around the world depending on us to put in our effort, to do some of the hard spiritual work that is required to have those authentic spiritual conversations. It is a blessing to be here and to be authentic with you. Amen.
I ain't gonna
It is so important not to take yourself seriously. Truly, it's so important because you just lose the thread. Source of life. God, my darling. Inspire us to bear witness as we walk out these doors, as we turn to those sitting next to us, to see the worth and the dignity in their eyes, and allow those eyes to be mirrors back to us about our own worth and dignity. And awaken us to the space beyond the fortresses of right and wrong, beyond the boundaries and fences that we make, where we are all just in the source. No birth, no death, just interwovenness. And fill us with grace so that we may find the courage to be vulnerable, to put our altars out there for those to see, because what we want most of all is to be authentic. Amen. Go in peace.
How do you say to a child in the night, nothing's all black, but then nothing's all white? How do you say it will all be all right when you know that it might not be true? What do you do? Careful the things you say, children will listen. Careful the things you do, children will see and learn. Children may not obey, but children will listen. Children will look to you for which way to turn, to learn what to be. Careful before you say, listen to me. Children will listen. Careful the wish you make. Wishes are children. Careful the path they take, wishes come true, not free. Careful the spell you cast, not just on children. Sometimes the spell may last past what you can see and turn against you. Careful the tale you tell, that is the spell. Children will listen.